My oldest daughter has faced some difficult health challenges in her life journey. As she grew up, we invested significant resources to ensure she had the support she needed. While I would rather not go into the details of her diagnosis, I will point out that it is one that is not diagnosed in children until their teenage years. After time, she has been able to overcome her challenges and at age 22 is preparing for college. Her younger sister, Sally, 18, is also a college student. Growing up in her older sister's shadow was a challenge for Sally, affecting their relationship. However, their bond grew stronger over time, aided by family therapy. Sally often expressed concern about her childhood being overshadowed by the attention of her older sister. We recognized her feelings and decided to fill the gap by offering her something she had long desired. The gesture startled Sally, but also filled her with joy, strengthening our relationship. When Sally asked for a car, we did not refuse. This decision displeased our oldest daughter, who claimed that she had never had so much money spent on her. This led to a dialogue about how much we had invested in each of our daughters, emphasizing that our support was not limited to the financial aspects. Unfortunately, this discussion turned into an argument in which the older daughter expressed her displeasure to me, which was a source of frustration for me. Getting Sally's car was a landmark moment. Our decision did not take into account the costs of medical needs such as therapy, even though they required a significant amount of money. I am talking about the various interventions and extra efforts we made to support her sister, including there were times when we communicated with her individually, and we even arranged a retreat just for her, leaving Sally at home. This decision was prompted by advice that our older daughter needed more individualized attention. Despite our efforts, the lack of attention remained an issue. All the additional purchases to keep her calm or to compensate for accidental spoilage had not had the desired effect. Sally, in a similar situation, also suffered from attention deficit and rarely received gifts as our finances were depleted. Her birthdays went without much celebration, which I now recognize as our serious mistake. Recognizing my carelessness, I explained to my eldest daughter how much had been spent on her and even provided receipts to prove it. This step, taken without proper thought, had unintended consequences. Blaming oneself for what happened should not be blamed. The older daughter needs to realize that she had certain advantages in life compared to her younger sister. Over time, it has become apparent that the older one has become accustomed to special attention, and it is difficult for her to accept that this time the younger one is being prioritized. At the age of 22, the older daughter is able to achieve what she wants on her own, such as buying a car by finding a job. By the time I reached a similar age, I was already raising 2 children and living an independent lifestyle. Though not without difficulty, but through persistence, I managed to buy a car by summer before my child went to kindergarten. The older daughter is frustrated that the younger one is getting attention and compensation for past experiences, being seemingly overlooked in her own home. Although the older one was often the center of attention, it was not always at her will. The older daughter should realize that her problems, though through no fault of her own, led to the younger sister's lack of attention as the parents were forced to focus on the older one. Now that the older daughter is in a more stable state, it's important for her to learn to realize that not everything revolves around her. This realization applies to you as well. Apparently, you recognize your mistakes in raising the younger daughter, who felt sidelined by the older daughter's problems. Everyone involved in this situation has lessons to learn and work on, even though the younger daughter was in a more difficult position. You mentioned the significant expense of therapy, but don't forget the retreats and special moments just for the older daughter. One has to wonder if the younger one also wanted time alone with mom, to receive attention and care. Such moments were a way for the older sister to get what she wanted, confirming that attention and support were not evenly distributed. Next story. From the moment we started actively organizing our wedding, something unusual emerged. Our families, especially my parents, displayed a strange obsession. They never missed an opportunity to comment on how sad and disappointing it was that my birth family, my blood relatives, would not be present. Aaron repeatedly tried to explain that my real family was my adoptive parents, my brothers and sisters, but his words were met with skepticism, as if he were speaking absurdities. Aaron insisted on bringing closure to the matter. We even walked out of meetings a couple times when the conversation turned to the same thing. But during a recent dinner with Aaron's immediate family and family friends, when the topic came up again, I decided to open up and share my feelings and experiences with adoption. I was taken from my biological parents at the age of 5. Before I found my new family, I was going through a very unstable period. I was 7 when I moved in with them and 9 when they adopted me. That same year, the first of my siblings arrived in our family. I am extremely grateful to have found my parents and to be a part of this family. I remember the bad parts of living with my biological family and am not nostalgic for that time. So I emphasize to future in-laws that I don't consider it a tragedy to be disconnected from people who may have made a 5-year-old feel completely unloved. Being surrounded by people with shared DNA doesn't mean feeling warm and loving. I shared that I can't imagine my life today involving people I once considered family. It is unacceptable to me to believe that shared DNA trumps the meaning of love. I also expressed that being around such people only brought me suffering. Daily I longed for someone to truly love me. I confessed that I realized what love was only when I was 7 years old and met my parents, especially my father. He has been the epitome of love to me, the most loving, caring, and compassionate person I have ever met. He is a shining example of a man capable of loving deeply and sincerely. I explained that my real parents were a foster family who took in a child who was in such a severe emotional state that he could not eat or sleep like a normal person and often cried helplessly before going to bed. These people walked me to school every morning, helped me catch up with the program and homework because I was far behind in my studies. They became my true family, with not only my parents but also my siblings, realizing that we are not connected by DNA, surrounded me with love and support at every stage of my life from the age of 7. They made me a part of their family forever through adoption. After my words, the prospective in-laws fell silent. They later expressed to me that they felt humiliated and uncomfortable in their own home. They felt I had overstepped my bounds. But Aaron pointed out, stressing that they should realize when it was time to leave and apologize to me. In the end, I realized my mistake in expressing my feelings in this way. You were absolutely not wrong in your words and actions, and Aaron's support is something that is completely justified. Your mention of your father and a certain P hints that you have 2 fathers, which in turn makes me very interested. It seems that their rejection has less to do with blood ties than it does with their own problem, which is certainly unfortunate. You have taken your stance and done nothing wrong. There will always be people for whom blood relation is crucial, but I've always wondered why they forget that they themselves chose to love someone not related to them by blood ties and seek to spend the rest of their lives with that person. If their misunderstanding is about adoption, I wish you the best of luck. I hope your message reached them. I am pleased to know that Aaron supports you unconditionally. Now I want to tell a different story. I turned 25 years old. My spouse turned 26. We recently had a baby boy. I took on the responsibility of breastfeeding, which was not an easy task, but I tried not to be discouraged. Although I sometimes breastfeed our baby in public places, I try to do it discreetly. At home, I feel completely free and openly feed the baby without feeling any embarrassment. Since the baby came into our lives, we have not had any guests over. My husband, bored of socializing with friends, suggested that they get together at our house again on weekends. Previously, he had been having regular get-togethers every 2 weeks. Last Sunday, friends came over to spend time playing video games. Normally, I don't participate in their games, preferring to lounge on the couch or do my business in another room. During one of these gatherings, as I was feeding the baby in the bedroom, I felt like having a snack. I headed to the kitchen, which I had a view of from the living room, not realizing that it might raise any questions. My husband and his friends saw me, but other than my spouse, no one showed any obvious surprise or discomfort. My husband approached me and quietly asked me not to breastfeed at this time. I replied to him that I was hungry and I shouldn't be hiding in my own home. He insisted that I go back upstairs, to which I responded sharply. Eventually, after a brief exchange, I retreated back to my room, feeling angry and frustrated, and waited for the guests to go home. Since then, the mood between my husband and me has remained tense. He has expressed concern that such incidents might make his friends uncomfortable and suggested that he might not invite them again if such situations were to recur. I, on the other hand, feel that I acted naturally, meaning no harm, just being engaged in feeding the baby. This story is a reminder of the importance of personal space while your husband is not involved in the breastfeeding process. In my observation, here's what happened. You're far from an idiot, and his friends didn't seem to pay attention until he started talking about it himself. It's not surprising that there are concerns about it. The husband basically implied that his friends were people who couldn't contain themselves and wondered if she breastfed in their presence, hoping to see something inappropriate. I would feel uncomfortable in that situation too. You need to breastfeed your baby, but it's also important to get enough nutrition yourself to maintain your health and well-being. You are taking care of two lives. Now it's worth reminding your husband and his frustrated friends of the boundaries of decency and respect for personal space. My next story. My spouse is 28 years old and I am 29 years old. We are raising two children, a preschooler and an infant. Our union has been going strong for 4 years. My spouse devotes part of her time to her secretarial work, while I am employed full-time as a plumber. At the birth of our youngest child, we were faced with his serious medical condition, which led to the accumulation of medical debt. We are not struggling with that debt now, but rather trying to live in a way that makes us comfortable. Despite her lack of love for her job, my wife continues to labor at it as she shows herself successful and receives a high enough salary for a novice specialist. Her dream is to become a nurse, but circumstances and child-related responsibilities have sidelined that goal. I sincerely sympathize with her and support her aspiration to realize her dream, which I have repeatedly made clear. However, now that my wife has expressed a desire to begin her studies, I have found it difficult to see how we can reconcile this with our current situation: childcare, debt, her job, and the need to pay tuition. There is a possibility that the kids could spend time with her parents and she could find a night job. But my fear is that her income will decrease and I will have to work harder to keep our financial situation stable. This would entail less time at home and an increase in my responsibilities around the house. I expressed my inability to support this choice at the current time, suggesting that we wait a few years until the children start school. In response, my wife accused me of selfishness, stating that she was also entitled to happiness and self-actualization. She emphasized the unfairness of the situation where I find pleasure in my work while she has to put up with a job she dislikes. While I recognize the unfairness of this situation, I still feel that this is not a good time to change careers and feel unable to support her in this choice. As someone who has gone through this and ended up successfully, I want to share my thoughts. Now is the perfect time to turn my attention to caring for those in need. I had the unique opportunity to always have support in any endeavor. Mutual support is the key to success. That goes for you as well. Support her aspirations. Her hobbies can bring happiness not only to her, but to your entire family. This is a situation where there are no losers. However, if the family can't afford to live on one income, it's worth waiting to make big changes. You need to think about childcare. Constant financial pressure and lack of family time will not make anyone happy. Don't hesitate to discuss the possibility of postponing plans. It could be a solution for your family's well-being. Don't be in a hurry to close doors to opportunities. Allow her to explore the programs available. Now may be the perfect time to learn so that you can be ready for new challenges when the children go to school. Many courses are available online. Support doesn't necessarily mean financial risk. I was working full-time and studying at the same time while supporting my family. Many of my classmates did the same. We had children and we managed despite the challenges. Yes, it wasn't easy, but the end result was worth it. Your partner has a chance for personal growth. By supporting her, you are demonstrating your unwillingness to make temporary sacrifices for the greater good. Ultimately, if you are not willing to compromise, she may choose her path without you. It's important to remember that support and understanding are the foundation of any relationship. A story that really surprised me. I am 25 years old and I am a man who became the eldest son in my father's large family. He has fathered many children over the past 25 years and I am in the position of the eldest of them. During this time, my mother, while married to him, found out about his infidelity. She made the decision to remove him when she was pregnant with me. Immediately after I was born, it was revealed that my father was expecting to have another child with a woman with whom he was having an affair. One of my younger half-brothers or sisters was born shortly before my first birthday. I did not develop relationships with my half-siblings. My mother expected more from my father than simple acts for show. She hoped he would be a real father and be involved in my life, including helping with necessary expenses. However, my father did not want other women, the mothers of his children, to make any demands on him. As a result, he stopped all communication with me. He led an aimless life, avoiding work and not participating in the lives of his other children. In my teenage years, I was confronted with the fact that I had half-siblings. Initially, the desire to develop deep relationships with them was absent. The circumstances seemed ambiguous to me. Although some of them were only a few years younger than me, they expected me to assume leadership and role model roles when I turned 20. Over time, I learned of the existence of 12 such siblings, totaling 15 known to me. Realizing that most of them were still children, I had no desire to be harsh or indifferent to them. Instead, I chose to have an open dialogue with their mothers. I explained that I could not be the perfect big brother they might have previously expected. After reflection, I came to the conclusion that it was important to at least attempt to understand and get to know each other. Thus, I became involved in a group chat room for siblings who were 13 or older. Although I was not particularly active in the chat room, I decided that getting to know these people mattered. My group chat activity was low, but I felt it was important to gain insight into my half-siblings. After all, not much was happening in our socializing. After meeting my future wife, we decided to discuss the situation with her parents and even had a DNA test. The reason for this was my realization of how many half-brothers and sisters I have around the world, which seemed quite disturbing. Relationships with my half-siblings escalated when they found out about my wedding not from me, but through social media. Those of them who were close in age to me were particularly offended by the lack of an invitation. Misunderstandings arose from this, as I was expected to act as the head of the family and keep in touch with all present and future half-siblings as the eldest. I made it clear that I was not going to take on that responsibility as I was required to do. They interpreted my behavior as if I believed that we should not maintain a warm relationship. I explained that I had never intended to have such an extended family, where half-brothers and half-sisters could be both significantly younger and possibly older than me. Compounding the complexity of our relationship is the fact that when I meet people, I can never be sure if they are my half-siblings. In rejecting the offer to take responsibility for such a large and uncertain family, I have faced criticism. Some called me unreasonable and insisted that I should accept and embrace this large family. You're not an idiot. Believe me, you really aren't. I'll be honest with you. You are not responsible for all of them. You're not their father, and you don't have to fulfill the role of leader among your father's children. If they had treated you as a friend, perhaps the relationship could have developed differently. There is no genetic right that obligates them to be at your wedding. After all, it could have turned your big day into a reunion with relatives, putting the important event on the back burner and increasing the cost of organization. You've already tried 3 times to build a relationship with them, which was quite honorable of you. Now it may be time for you to limit the connection. They are looking to you for a father figure or perhaps even a therapist, but you are neither one nor the other for them. The lack of a father figure is a big problem for them, and they are looking to fill that vacuum. It's unfortunate, but it's essentially not your problem or fault. You can't take responsibility for your father's actions. They have mothers to model for them and help them find their way in life. You are free to participate in their lives for as long as you choose and should not feel held back by your father's lack of self-control. It amazes me how a situation involving single motherhood and an absent, unreliable parent could attract so many participants. Time to put it all behind you, enjoy your wedding, and build a happy life.